If he tells me that I have to do this, I will not flinch and I will do it. And my word is more important than few minutes of sunshine. There are no Brahmins, there are no non-Brahmins, there are no Christians, there are no Muslims, there are only Indians. That is why we die for each other.
Hello, I'm Raji here. Welcome to Real and Real Characters. Suppose you were in a job that you liked and you were given a challenging project, but you would have to consider a couple of things before taking up that project. One, that you may never see your family ever again, and two, your life may be at risk. Would you still take up that project? We asked many people to give their answers to this question, and many of them did not even consider it worthwhile to send their answers on video or any other way, because to them it was an obvious no. But you and I are sitting here safe and peaceful because there are many, many young men and women who have taken up that challenging project, knowing fully well that they may never see their families again and knowing that their lives are at risk. Yes, I am talking about the armed forces of our country who are keeping our borders safe for our sake. And in this episode, we are going to meet one such person from the armed forces, from the Air Force actually, who has been serving our country for the past 25 years, Group Captain Murali Sundaram.
Group Captain Murali Sundaram came from Kunnur in the Nilgiri district. He graduated from the National Defence Academy in Kadakbasla, Pune, and was then selected to the Indian Air Force and commissioned as pilot officer from the Air Force Academy in Hyderabad in 1979. He flew the Dakota, Avro and Boeing 737 for about 7,500 hours, especially in the northeast Himalayas. He flew in the Air Headquarters Communication Squadron for 15 years, which flies the top leaders of our nations and heads of other countries. He has done a number of flying trips across Asia, Middle East and Europe. He postgraduated in Defence and Strategic Studies and was senior instructor at the Defence Service Staff College at Wellington and took voluntary retirement after 24 years in the rank of Group Captain. He has since been working in civil aviation with Blue Dart Aviation Limited as senior manager, training pilots as instructor on Boeing 757.
Welcome to Real and Real Characters, Group Captain Murali Sundaram. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for getting me on this program.
The film that has inspired Group Captain Murali Sundaram is Border.
Border is an Indian 1997 Hindi war drama film directed, produced and written by J.P. Datta. Set during the Indo-Pakistan War of 1971, it is an adaptation of real-life events that happened during the Battle of Longewala in 1971. The film stars an ensemble cast of Sunny Deol, Sunil Shetty, Akshay Khanna, Jackie Shroff, Sudesh Berry, Puneet Issar and Kulbhushan Karbanda. Tabu Raki, Pooja Bhatt and Sharbani Mukherjee feature in supporting roles. Music for Border was by Anu Malik, background score was by Adesh Srivastava, lyrics were by Javed Akhtar and cinematography was by Ishwar Bidri and Nirmal Jani. Border was mostly shot in Bikaner, Rajasthan and some parts were also filmed in Jodhpur. One of the film's songs, Sandesa Aate Hain, sung by Sonu Nigam, became one of the most popular Hindi songs. The song Mere Dushman Mere Bhai was sung by Hariharan. The film became the highest-grossing Hindi film of 1997 in India. It also received 11 nominations at the 43rd Filmfare Awards, 3 National Film Awards, including Best Film on National Integration, and several Star Screen Awards as well. During production and filming, both the Indian Army and Air Force provided vehicles, rifles, and machine guns, as well as uniforms and tactics used by the Pakistani Army during the Battle of Longewala. T-55 tanks resembling Chinese-origin Pakistani-type T-59s, weapons of the 70s era like Bren machine guns and SLRs, as well as Air Force planes like Hawker Hunters and MiG-21s were shown. It was shot on actual locations in the deserts of Rajasthan.
The underlying theme of this entire movie is, in war there are no victors. Everybody has something to lose, and the people who are part of it actually has to lose more. It characterized something which we all put it as part of, jingoism or stories which to lift the morale of the people, etc. It's not so. Firstly, it was a real time story, and when we keep saying our Indian people have got an X factor and they are actually force multipliers, this is one of the biggest example. This Longewala is a small stretch of barren land in Rajasthan, somewhere beyond Jaisalmer, along the Pakistan border. There was one Major Kuldeep Singh Chandrapuri. He was asked to take over 23rd Punjab Regiment, a small battalion of only 150 people to go and defend this place. Indians initially had no designs to penetrate into that area or go into Pakistan. So it was mainly a defensive maneuver, and hardly 150 people, soldiers with two small guns and rifles and nothing else. So when Major Kuldeep went to take over, he also met Lieutenant Dharamveer. Both are real life characters. Lieutenant Dharamveer was a young man who just came out of the academy from Dehradun, and he was his number two. Dharamveer was so young, about 21 or 22 or so. His father was also an ex-army man who lost his life in 1965 war. But Dharamveer was nothing like that. He didn't have the kind of aura that you would normally have with a family background like that. He was totally different. Chandar was the senior NCO, Naik Subedar, very important person as I understand in the army setup. He has a great influence on the way the soldiers below behaved. Now when Kuldeep went and took over this place, he set up his defenses with a small number of people. There's one scene which is very well depicted in this movie. Kuldeep, another Jawan called Bhairam, and Dharamveer, they went out on a patrol kind of a thing to a nearby area. They stumble across some infiltrators from Pakistan. So in the ensuing battle or a small firing, Kuldeep finishes some of the infiltrators and orders Dharamveer to shoot the third infiltrator. Dharamveer is rather inexperienced. In fact, he looks a little shaky and he fails to shoot. The situation was so bad that Major Saab shot that infiltrator, and in fact, he yelled at Dharamveer for being so indecisive. And actually, when Dharamveer saw that man dying, he vomits in the movie. He just couldn't see the death. So you think he is going to be a very timid character, and how is he going to face this problem? Because all of them at the back of their head knew that war is round the corner. Subedar's character, Chandar, he goes and tells his CEO that, sir, my wife is suffering from cancer. She's got very few days left. I want to go home. Now you can imagine the commanding officer's dilemma. As such, I've got very little men. And the senior most of the men wants to go home because he's got a pressing and a compassionate reason to go home. Mostly we face this in normal day-to-day life in the armed forces. Do you want to favor the boy and see him, maybe it's in a once in a lifetime for him, or is the present job at hand more pressing? It's a very difficult situation for any commander to be in, and we face this very often. I can tell you this. At times, people back home never understand this, and most of the times, CEOs may be taking a stance that country is more important or the job at the hand is more important. He's seen as a villain by everyone around. Oh, how come he couldn't spare that one man? But that one man could be most important for him. In this case, Major Kuldeep took a decision to send him home, senior most of his life. Chandar departs and he reached the nearest railway head to catch a train home to meet his ailing wife. Perhaps he might meet her for a very few moments or in her last days. At the station, somehow he overhears that how Indian Army is preparing for a war and how it is important and how our soldiers are giving, etc. It dawns on him that what a responsibility he has left behind. Just 3 hours or 2 hours before the actual war started, he came back and joined the unit. He took charge, and in the movie, actually, he died fighting. Just imagine what would be the emotion of this commanding officer, emotion of his friends around. That is why sometimes it's very difficult to measure what one goes through psychologically. Actually, Dharamveer was depicted in the movie very well by Mr. Akshay Khanna. He was really not made out for that kind of life till that moment when he saw death in front of him. How it changed him as a human being, unable to fathom. In real life, Lieutenant Dharamveer rose to become colonel and he is still alive. When this movie was to be made, JP Datta wrote to him saying that, okay, I'm going to kill you in this movie. Would you agree? So this person, without a thought, faxed him a letter saying that if this is what the country needs, please go ahead. I have no objection to be killed in the movie. When he actually saw the movie, along with his wife, who just passed away in 2015, I think, in real life, they realized that what an impact it has made. His wife was very upset that how can you depict my husband as dead? Another point to ponder here is neither the filmmakers nor the people who surround the media hype, etc., called this Dharamveer even once for any of the shows or any of the promos. He was not even paid a pie for his character being depicted. So when Dharamveer was asked later on in life as Colonel, after all, you played as much of a role in this movie, you should protest. He said, see, I have given my word and my word is more important than few minutes of sunshine or few rupees. He's still alive. You don't hear about him at all. And this guy fought valiantly in that war. Major Kuldeep Singh developed a friend in the Air Force, one Wing Commander Bajwa. Wing Commander Bajwa was commanding a hunter squadron in a place called Jaisalmer, which is just as a crow flies, you can say, about 5 to 10 minutes to Longewar. The hunter had a problem. They could not fly at night. That is why those days all attacks used to be done at night. They were in constant touch with each other that if I have any problem, I am going to be asking for your help. And this happened in real life too. So when the war was declared, Major Kuldeep got information that there are 2,000 Pakistani soldiers who are only a few kilometers away approaching his post, and they are going to run over his post with more than 30 odd tanks. Just imagine 30 tanks, 2,000 soldiers, 150 Indians, 2 machine guns, and rest all are old rifles. Major Kuldeep, when he got this information, he asked his commanding officer, I won't be able to defend this. It's indefensible. We'll be like slaughtered. So his commanding officer said, there are 2 options for you. Either you can live and fight till your last man, or you abandon and retreat, because reinforcement cannot come in such a short notice. So he rang up Bajwa. Bajwa said, sorry, I cannot fly at night. At night, if you try to bomb like that, sometimes you kill your own troops. So therefore he said, I would not be able to do that. So he gathered his men around Major Kuldeep. He told them, see, the options are very, very little. If any one of you or all of you want to leave, please leave. But I am going to stay here and see whatever I can do. But rest of you all can leave and go. All the 150 of them decided to stay with them. 2,000 guys is just not possible in any war. No mad general would ever accept such an equation, you know. Within those 3 hours he had, since there were tanks coming, whatever little anti-tank mines he could put across, he put it at some distance and built up a small defense and got prepared for this massive onslaught. So initially when the tanks were coming across, 1 or 2 of them got trapped by the anti-mines, and therefore in order not to lose more tanks, the Pakistani commander said, we will do an infantry attack on this small post, because he was confident that he could finish off this 150 in no time, because that was his information. Just at that time, when he was about 2 kilometers away, he heard some huge noise from the defensive position. It is said that 23rd Punjab Battalion soldiers, they were giving a Jai Ghosh or a war cry, you can say, that reverberated so much. Suddenly he felt that there were more than 500 or maybe 1,000.
यहाँ 120 आदमियों की कंपनी नहीं, 600 आदमी की पूरी बटालियन है.
The Pakistanis were a little confused initially and they couldn't assess the actual strength. They started suspecting their intelligence. So, in order not to risk his tanks, because his tanks were supposed to reach Jaisalmer the next day and thereafter reach by that evening to Delhi. So, he started sending his troops. What started was a valiant fire from across both sides.
Fire!
It even ended up in hand-to-hand cup fighting. Nobody knew how 150 people could hold on against tanks and 2,000 soldiers for more than 6 hours.
What is the secret of that kind of...
That is what I call as factor X of our Indian armed forces. You punch well above your weight. You produce such an impact that it is greater than what you can ever assign it to. I understand that more than 10 tanks were disabled by the soldiers, and some of them what we call as death charge. You just charge directly at the guns with your chest on, with nothing else, take grenades and keep chucking. This is called a death charge. In the movie, he dies doing the death charge, but in real life, he lived. And so did Major Kuldeep. In fact, Major Kuldeep, in his anger, he started jumping onto the Pakistani tanks and kept on chucking hand grenades to whichever hatch it was open. And he disabled about 9 tanks, so they say. There is a big trophy in his front lobby of his house, even today in Chandigarh. The losses were quite heavy. Could be close to about 80-90 people. You can imagine you had 150 people and about 50% of them have died. Some were working as cooks and waiters for that battalion and they were firing the guns. So this is what is called factor X. You know, a guy who has come for something else but still he is trying to do his bit for the country. You can't take it as, just I'm being very big patriot. No, the situation gets on top of them. When you see your own brethren there, when you see a guy who is talking to you and encouraging you, next minute he is not there. How it shocks you, how it gives an anger, how it gives an extra energy to fight. I think JP Datta put it across very well. But at the same time, he also pointed out that when your own friends, when your own known people die, how much hurt it gives. In the movie, next day morning, Wing Commander Bajwa and his guys in the Hunter aeroplane, they were waiting. The moment the sunlight is just up, they came. These tanks were still standing on the open instead of attacking Jaisalmer, so they blasted the tanks. They inflicted such damage that Pakistan, that 2,000 people, whomever could live, they retreated, and the Indian army thought of counter-attacking in that place and chasing them later on in the war. Actually, they say the Air Force played a decisive role because they stopped the movement of the tanks next day. But the fact remains, for 6 hours, 150 people against some 30-odd tanks and 2,000 guys fully armed. Unbelievable. How did they do it? It is part of our history. It's a part of folklore in armed forces. Every guy who participated in this particular battle actually needs to be cheered and cherished. Unfortunately, our history is not like that. We don't teach our people what it is. We don't even know that Dharamveer is still alive, who refused all the light and shine and money and the fame and everything because he had given a word to JP Datta. That is why I say our armed forces and army is far, far superior to many in the world. I have no details of Galwan Valley, but I am not at all surprised. A bunch fighting with bare hands could take on 3 times the number of soldiers who were armed with better arms, better things, and yet could take on. And knowing fully well that I may not come back. The point is this: when Chandar came back to join his battalion, he knew that he may not see his wife again. What a decision for him. When his own CEO said, okay, go on, leave. But he said, no, he came back.
What kind of character is it that makes a person take that decision knowing so well? What is this armed forces mindset?
Since I've worn uniform for 25 years, I can tell you this. When we go into a unit, flying unit, etc., the unit almost become like a family. My CO is like my father, my God. I think whatever he says is final. If he tells me that I have to do this, I will not flinch and I will do it. And I faced this in my own life in many real time situations. When I had to take a decision, my men stood behind me. I don't know really why they stood behind me or why they stood with me.
Is it
I
based
just can't put it.
on training?
It's the ethos, it is the way in which you look after them during peace, it's the way in which you train together, it's the way in which you face the hardship, the way in which you share their joys and sorrows. A Jawan gets, maybe 3 months in a year to spend home. 9 months he is in the unit. I would say it is his first home. And his CEO becomes like a father or God. So if I have to take a decision on a son of mine, would I want him to get injured or fatally injured or lost forever? Therefore, when I ask him to do something, most of the times they do it. Perhaps it's this loyal bonding. It's the way in which we are trained, the way in which we are put together. There's a special bonding. I just can't explain. And this movie gives that. That is why I love this movie. Major Kuldeep himself, he knew that everything is against. He knew that his men are going to be killed. He knew that he is facing an uphill task. He may not last for 6 hours. He told his men to withdraw and he said, okay, I will not go back. If he had stood alone there with a couple of guns, what would he have achieved? 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and that's the end of it. But he was prepared to do it.
What makes a person do that?
That is where a kind of psychological bonding to the job that is given to you by the army or by the Air Force or by the country becomes more important than anything else. It's pretty difficult to fathom this. You can't do a mathematical calculation. That's why we call this as a factor of X. You can never underestimate Indian Armed Forces.
The country is made to doubt the actions of the armed forces at some points, So what do you have to say about that?
That is because, unfortunately, political parties have started politicizing army. Have you ever seen a general or an air marshal, air chief marshal or a naval chief ever telling that, I am a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or I belong to a Parsi community, I am a minority or I am a majority or I support X party or Y party or I am from Tamil Nadu or Orissa or Bihar? It is only the politicians say he is from Bihar, Mr. Pani is from Tamil Nadu. Army never says.
So,
this was the fabric which was holding. There was no difference. For me, my best buddy could be from any religion. It doesn't matter. Food, we shared, water, we shared. And by the way, each of the army regiments and each of the Air Force units, we have our own temples, mosques and gurdwaras inside our place and we pray. A Muslim commander could be leading what we call a mandir parade and do a puja in mandir. And a perfectly Sikh gentleman could be reading a Ramzan thing. Every regiment has got a pandit. Before starting something new, he performs a puja. Before a naval ship is assigned to waters, there's a puja conducted. But nobody attributes to anything political, anything religious. It's a faith, but faith with no attachment. I don't see you as a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian. Whereas I hear somebody says, how many Brahmins are there in the army? There are no Brahmins. There are no non-Brahmins. There are no Christians. There are no Muslims. There are only Indians. That is why we die for each other. I have faced so many times situation in my later year in life when I had to take decisions, risks. People, irrespective of their caste, irrespective of the color, irrespective of the region he came from or what he believed in his spiritual world, just stood by me.
What did you go through?
We were faced in a situation in a foreign country where it appeared that our aeroplane had been tampered with and that was a terrorist infested country and we had carried a VIP. We had no way to ascertain whether it has been tampered or not. So some of the locks which we had put in were missing. After the checks, the home country said it's possible that some plastics explosives could be placed inside and you cannot detect it. Even a dog may not be able to detect it. So what we decided to do was to do a dummy flight over that place without the VIP on board. And if any guy had a remote, he could blast it. So when that was the situation, I gathered my men around and said, okay, we are going to do this. We'll do as if exact dummy without the VIP. All of us will get in. But anybody who is not wanting to be part of this can step back. Do you know, not one step back? Not one. We did the dummy flight, nothing happened. Whatever it is, we came back. Later on, we had a steward who used to be looking after the bosses whom we carried, give them, refreshments and things like that. But otherwise, he is also a guy who will look after the safety of the people in case of something untoward. So I called this gentleman, hey, you got family and children and all. You should have stayed back, man. Unnecessarily you are coming. He said, sir, आप भी तो शादीशुदा है, बच्चे हैं, लेकिन आप जहाँ भी जाओगे, आपका black coffee तो मैं ही पिलाऊंगा ना. And that is the armed forces, which many don't see it. So when we were on our way back home, flying, we crossed into the Indian territory. I walked back into his in his chamber and said, "Sir, sorry for the delay, and it was inevitable. And we had to do it. So I hope you won't mind." He said, "Do you know who I am?" And I told him, "Sir, I know you are an ex-army man who served as a major in the army. And why did you worry? I would have come along with you, even in the trial flight." I was taken aback. Here is a man who was in such a high position talking to me like this.
Is it that you don't value life, or you don't see life as important? Or
we value our life, but we also learn that we can't say, I can't do it. I will do it somehow. So that is where the X factor comes in. I do something which is beyond my capability. Major Kuldeep Singh pulled off one of the greatest ever in the history of India. If history of war, if anybody has to chronicle, he will be somewhere at the top. The government recognized his deed. He retired as Brigadier Kuldeep Singh, Mahavir Chakra. He was also given a presidential award for his deed for leading his men. I think he passed away only in 2017, and even about him we hardly hear. Now these guys are true, real heroes. You see, war has got death, and there is no winner. It's a painful thing, and war should not be an option for us. It should be thrust on us. We should not be seeking to go for war. There cannot be a greater son of India than Field Marshal Manekshaw. He was my idol beyond limits. He led this country during this war. He has seen Second World War. Exemplary man who stood by his word, man who could tell the political masters what his professional ideas were or what his professional decisions were without baiting an eyelid.
Can you give me some example of that?
When this Bangladesh war was to be happening, that time Prime Minister Mrs. Gandhi wanted to launch a war sometime in May, June of 1971. And there was a cabinet meeting in which he was called and told. So he said, sorry ma'am, I'm not ready for this war. If we do that, our agriculture output will be affected. Our logistic systems will be affected. There will be rain in Bangladesh. We will not be able to free Bangladesh, and my Air Force will be finding it difficult to support. So I understand, Madam Prime Minister, in a fit of mood or whatever it is, this meeting dismissed. And he said, Sam, you hold on. When everybody was walking away, he was the junior most, hold on. So he said, ma'am, okay, what do you want me to give my resignation as? I'm not well. Any other reason? I can write it out and give my resignation right now. She said, no. You tell me when you will be ready. Such men are rare to find. He came through as a man who is upright, was thinking on the right lines, who had the interest of his country on his sleeves. He was not afraid to call spade a spade. And he didn't want to be seen low at any given point of time. I admired him a lot. You can say he's my idol. He lived till the age of 98 or 97, very ripe old age. Do you know that he didn't get his field marshal pension till about 3 months he died? Because he felt it is too low to stoop and go and beg to somebody sitting in an office. So when he was in his final stages, Mr. Abdul Kalam went to visit him. And he just asked him, hope you are getting your pay and emoluments. He said, no, I have stopped thinking about it. I'm about to go. So Mr. Abdul Kalam as president restored it just 3 months short of his final date.
And nobody had known or noticed that he had not been getting it when
Whether they knew or they didn't know, but that is how we treat our heroes. If you want to inspire our next generation, I will say Field Marshal Manakshaw is number one. For his death, there was not a single politician attending his funeral. That's a sad part of the story. We somehow tend to wither away our family jewels like this. They are treasures of this country. He should be like a permanent story in this country.
a lot of the civilians don't even get to know what the army or the armed forces are.
That's my point, because ultimately he was a hero of 1971 battle. And yet, the country seems to have forgotten him totally.
Is there a way that the armed forces can interact with the civilians, do you think?
It is the civilians who have to seek out the army. Army is cocooned. We don't want the corruption of life, I would say, to creep into the soldiers, because we have brought them in a different way. And we don't want them to change their values.
How do you bring them up which is so different from the rest of the country?
One is we pick the men. Secondly, we don't have reservations, caste, color, creed. Any man who we feel is psychologically okay, physically fit, mentally strong, reasonable ability, we can turn him into gold.
What do you do to turn him into gold? We would like to turn into gold in the civilian.
The confidence that the manpower that you have in this country is actually good. Most of the times, we are mishandling them. You go to any village today, you are hungry, you just knock a villager and say, I am hungry. 99 times out of 100, he will not only give you food, water, he might even give you shelter and say, go. But we are so brought and bred up in city life that we are scared to know who is our neighbor in the flat. So, we are living in a world which is removed from the country. And that is why we are not able to believe that these guys, you take the history of these 20 chaps who died in Galwan. They are all from the villages of this country from various parts. It's called Bihar Regiment. Mr. Palani was working in Bihar Regiment. Palani is from Tamil Nadu. Did he do some fifth language training or third language education or first language education? There are two Punjabi Sardars who are in that same regiment. How did they land up in Bihar Regiment? Does anybody ask this question?
How do you then divide your regiments?
Basically, we give them so that they get a sense of belonging, but we also mix and match with them at the appropriate level so that they get to interact with others. At the same time, all the officers who go to this regiment are not from their place. Very rarely you may find a Tamilian in Madras Regiment and as an officer. You might find Avtar Singh or somebody else who is coming from the Madras Regiment. There are situations where there is a fifth generation person who is in the army. Even in the Air Force, we have second or third generation people in the Air Force because they think that it is their moral right to keep their family's name going. What kind of money you will pay for it?
Dharamveer also comes into the army, though he is of a very soft nature. Because
but his father was in the army, yes, exactly. And in the movie, it is shown that his mother she lost her husband 6 years back. She loses her son now, and she takes it very stoically. It's very difficult to achieve this, and she is from a village. And you can think of her personal loss. India has won, but has she?
How about this attachment to the country, which is so strong? Is mithi mein.
I've also interacted with people from other countries. They see it as a job. The bonding and friendship and a kind of familial relationship that you build in the armed forces is unparalleled.
Is it because you have at some level the idea that somewhere you have put your life on the line?
When I lead my men, I will not tell him to do anything which I can't do.
So that is the secret then. Get the loyalty of your people.
My men will know that if he says no, I will do the job without batting an eyelid. That is where it comes, the factor X, you can say that. And I will not order my men to do something which I am hesitating to do. That's why many people say that even all those politicians or anybody who wants to join engineering or this, that, they should do 2 years in the army. Some of the football teams, they do boot camps with the army. Once even our cricketers did a boot camp with the army because they think that's one way of, getting the bonding that you develop in the forces can creep onto them. Even today, if you want to explain 1971 war, all you have to do is download this movie and show it to your children.
So do you find that there is a need to infuse some of the army's attitudes into the younger generation.
Nothing of that is required. Only thing is, we should not distort our history or hide our history. Your book starts as if 1945 is what we are all born. India existed so many years. Like if I ask somebody, which is the longest man-made standing dam in India? Many wouldn't know. Do you know it was built by Karigala Cholan in Kallanai, which has stood 1,000 years? Do we teach our children? If we just teach our children what we are, good enough. They will know where they are, what their roots are from. They will behave accordingly. But you have given them that the Western way of life is the way of life. You must have heard of this place named Malacca Strait in Malaysia. Malacca is a shipping lane in which a lot of traffic goes through. Do you know who is the first king of this place? He is a Tamilian who established the Malacca Strait, and he established the Malacca Kingdom. You don't even have it in half a paragraph in our history. Do you know Chalukyas ruled for 600 years? Or Cholas ruled right up to Angkor Wat 400, 500 years?
Even
Nobody taught us.
the story of Ghazni, Muhammad Ghazni, is told us he defeated the Indians, but whereas 17 times he was the one defeated.
Exactly. What has been told to you? You are reading that. It's a vested interest. Right? Somebody had an agenda. We are Indians. We need to know about what we are doing. No. I'm not a religious guy, but Mr. Shankaracharya walked at the young age from Kaladi to Badrinath and Kedarnath and east and west, established those mutts, came back walking all the way and finished his life in 30s. We talk of Vasco da Gama came from somewhere, yeah. 1493 he landed in Calicut and Cochin and Goa. What about this guy? What communication he had? Did he know Kannada? Did he know Bihari or Punjabi? But he walked through this place. He interacted with them. He lived with them and convinced them my way is right. And he didn't fight a war, not a single drop of blood shed. Do we realize a guy in his early 30s and late 20s doing this? We don't even bat an eyelid. Oh, Shankaracharya, okay. We have to teach what we are. That's more than enough. You teach them our ethos. You teach them about our villages. You teach them how we were or how we have come up to this stage. They will know what to do. You don't have to sermonize them. We have to identify to them what they are. Where do they belong to? What do they represent? But we are trying to tell them they represent some American culture, American history. You can't go beyond 400 years. But we existed for 5,000 years or more. But we go over those pages in two or three paragraphs.
Tell me a little about the current situation. There is a potentially imminent war happening, is what we are hearing. So, how do we read that? What do we as the country have to look at and have to do to understand the mindset, the attitude? How do we get prepared?
The first thing I would ask every citizen in this country is, who is going to do the job for you if there is a situation? It is our armed forces. Stop questioning them. Stand by them. Encourage them if you can. If you can't encourage them, just keep quiet. He is the guy on the spot. He is putting his life on line. At least be beside him, support him psychologically, mentally, morally, whatever you can. Secondly, the government of the day, whoever it is, irrespective of the party, they have more information than you and me. Irrespective of region, caste, color, creed, once you are sitting there, you will have to think country first. So whatever information that is given to you is in the interest of the country. Whatever information is denied to you is also in the interest of the country. We have to trust them when there is a war. Who else will you trust? The guy who is doing the job and the guys who are guiding them. Somebody civilian who is walking on the road cannot take up a couple of stones and say, I will go and fight the Kargil. Can you do that? It's not possible. It is those 20, 25, 28-year-old guys who have just come out of the academy who do the death charge, as I told you, and capture those posts. And they did it in the interest of his country, in the interest of his family, in the interest of everybody. But he is not telling, I am doing this for Murali. I am doing this for Raj. So when he comes back, now you start questioning him. Are you Maharashtrian? Are you Bengali? That is where we down their morale. The forces never take decision. By the way, we only train. The decision is political. We are an instrument with the government. Government uses diplomatics. Government can use newsrooms. Government can use television, friends, even spies. At one stage, they use the army. It's a choice, or Air Force or Navy, or all of them. So we have to be prepared for every time. No general will go and say, okay, I want to capture tomorrow Pakistan, Lahore. He says, let the political decision come, and I am prepared. I am ready to do any job. I am trained. Our Indian troops are considered one of the best in the world.
I want to really thank you for coming on the show and really opening my eyes to what the army and the armed forces are about.
Thank you very much. And this is an opportunity actually to think about myself and think about the situation and talk to you. I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity. Thanks a lot.
That was Group Captain Murali Sundaram on Real and Real Characters.
Putting one's own life at risk for the sake of some unnamed, unknown citizen of the country. Are we, the regular people here, willing to take such an extreme step, like the heroes of Longewala did, or like Group Captain Murali Sundaram did when he entered and flew an aircraft, knowing very well that it might just be blown up by some terrorist, him and all the others with him in it? In these times of rivalry between siblings and relatives on petty issues, maybe we should ask ourselves, what is it that we would be willing to give up our lives for? And if we cannot find it in ourselves to do that, maybe we could just offer our respect and trust to those who have put their lives on the line for us. And another thing to think about, how much do we really know about ourselves, our country, our history, our civilization? As has been said, if you do not know your history, you are condemned to repeat it. And we really should not be in a place where we should repeat our mistakes. That is something to ponder over and to seek the truth out for. So that's it from me for now. See you again next episode with another guest, another movie, and another human value.
The movie question for this episode is this.
This is the true story of a brave Havaldar of the Sikh regiment of the British Indian Army posted along the Indian-Afghan border. He and his men decide to defend their fort against an attack by Afghans where they are greatly outnumbered. His bravery is such that he refuses to let anyone remove his turban during the war and dies fighting, a single man against a whole army. What film is this? What is the name of the Sikh Havaldar who fought so valiantly? When one of the Sikhs is set on fire, what does he cry out?
You can send your answers to the WhatsApp or email given here. The answers to the previous episode's movie questions are:
What movie is this? Answer: Sleepless in Seattle. Which character pursues the girl on the hero's behalf? Answer: his little son. Where do they finally meet? Answer: on top of the Empire State Building.
If you like this program, please click the like button, share, comment, and subscribe to the show.